The sky over Redwater Valley was bruised with the colors of an approaching storm when everything went wrong. People would later say they felt something in the wind that morning, a heaviness, a warning. But no one, not even the woman at the center of it, could have imagined how one decision made by a stubborn rancher would shake the entire town, crack open old wounds, and force everyone to face the truth they had spent years ignoring. It all began with a single act that looked unforgivable, until the truth came out. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes. It helps the channel more than you know. Her name was Clara Briggs, a quiet schoolteacher known for her gentle voice and her ability to make any child feel seen. People rarely noticed her in town unless their kids came home with stories of how she'd helped them, how she'd encouraged them to believe they were capable of more. Clara lived simply, carrying herself with the grace of someone who had learned to survive sorrow. Most didn't know about the tragedy she kept buried, losing her parents young, caring for her little brother until he died of a winter illness that the frontier doctors couldn't heal. She poured her whole heart into teaching to fill the silence of her life. And then there was Luke Marston, the rancher at the center of the storm. A man carved from the land, broad-shouldered, rough-handed, wind-burned from long days under the sun. People respected him, even feared him a little. Luke didn't smile much, didn't talk much, and didn't let anyone close. Not since the accident that took his wife 2 years earlier. He spent most mornings staring out over the endless plains as if the earth itself held the answers he couldn't find. The trouble began after Luke's prized Mustangs disappeared, wild, nearly legendary creatures known across the valley. Some said they could outrun storms. Others said they carried the spirit of the land with them. Luke loved those horses. They were all he had left of his past happiness. So when they vanished, anger, hot, blinding, desperate, took over. Someone had cut the fence. Someone had led them away. And someone had left behind a scrap of cloth caught on the wire. Clara's scarf. People found her wandering the outskirts of Luke's property, confused and shaken. She had been returning from visiting a sick student outside town when she took a wrong turn near the ridge. Her horse slipped, and she fell, hitting her head. She remembered little, only dust, pain, and waking up alone. But Luke saw only the scarf. And rage can make even good men blind. Word spread fast. By midday, nearly half the town was following Luke as he dragged Clara to the open plains, demanding she tell him what she'd done with his Mustangs. Clara pleaded through tears, insisting she had no memory of any horses, no reason to harm him. But he wouldn't listen. He bound her to the wooden frame he used for breaking wild colts, a device meant to restrain strength and thrashing, never meant for a terrified woman. Clara's voice cracked as she whispered, don't do this." But Luke did. People gasped, some shouted for him to stop, others held back, unsure if they were witnessing justice or madness. The whole town watched, outraged, or afraid, to intervene fully. The scene was raw, shocking, and heartbreaking. Yet even in that moment, Clara didn't curse him. She didn't scream hatred. She looked at him with confusion and hurt. That look would come back to haunt Luke long after the truth surfaced. It took the unexpected arrival of Old Ben, one of the valley's oldest horse traders, to shatter the chaos. He came riding hard, waving his hat, yelling before he even reached the crowd. He'd found Luke's Mustangs. But not stolen. Not taken by Clara. Saved. A wildfire had broken out beyond the northern ridge. Clara must have seen the smoke while riding home and gone to warn a nearby family. In doing so, she spotted Luke's Mustangs fleeing in panic toward a canyon. She'd driven them toward safer ground, straight toward Old Ben's land, where he'd taken them in temporarily. She had risked her own safety for animals that weren't even hers. When Old Ben lifted a burned piece of Clara's scarf, found near the fire line, the crowd erupted in stunned murmurs. Clara wasn't a thief. She had been a hero. But by then, the damage had been done. Luke's face drained of color as the truth hit him like a hammer. He untied her with shaking hands, whispering apologies that cracked in his throat. But Clara, trembling from fear and humiliation, couldn't look at him. The wound he carved in her spirit was too deep. The town was outraged, not at Clara, but at Luke. Even those who had remained silent earlier now found their voices. They accused him of cruelty, of acting without proof, of letting grief make him dangerous. For the first time in years, Luke didn't defend himself. He stood still, empty, and ashamed. Clara was taken to the doctor, then to her small cottage. She wouldn't speak to anyone for days. She woke at night from nightmares she couldn't fully describe, memories of fear twisting inside her like a knife. She didn't return to the school. She barely stepped outside. Luke knew 1,000 apologies wouldn't fix what he'd done. But he tried anyway. Every morning, he left something at her gate, fresh bread, rare herbs, flowers he handpicked from valleys miles away. Not to earn forgiveness, but to show he finally understood. The Mustangs were returned safely. Luke rebuilt the damaged fences. And then he disappeared from town for a while, people said, trying to quiet the guilt that followed him everywhere. Winter crept in slowly, coating Redwater Valley in frost and stillness. One evening, Clara found a small wooden box on her doorstep. Inside was a notebook, one she had once lost years ago, filled with stories her students had written. Luke had repaired it by hand after finding it on an old trail. A note rested on the last page, written in rough, uneven handwriting. I can't change what I did. But I can honor who you are. You saved what I love most. I nearly destroyed what the whole town loves most, you. I'm sorry. Not for expecting forgiveness, but because you deserved better than a broken man's anger. Luke. Clara cried that night, for the hurt, for the loss, and for the small flicker of hope that somehow survived inside her heart. As seasons turned, Clara slowly returned to herself. Her students cheered when she walked back into the schoolhouse. Life regained color, faint at first, then brighter. And one quiet morning, she found Luke waiting outside the schoolyard, hat in hand, eyes lowered. But he didn't ask for forgiveness. He offered help. To rebuild the old community barn the winter storms had shattered. People watched as the two worked side by side, slowly, cautiously, like two wounded souls learning to breathe again. Trust isn't something that returns overnight. But kindness has a way of stitching torn things back together. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes. It keeps these powerful stories alive. And before we end, tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Clara's place? In time, Clara did forgive Luke, not because he demanded it, but because he earned it through humility, through effort, through change. The town of Redwater Valley learned an unforgettable lesson, that outrage can explode in a moment, but redemption takes patience, courage, and grace. And sometimes, heroes aren't the ones who save the day. They're the ones who learn, who change, and who choose kindness when they easily could have walked away.